What if everything you've been told about success, power, and control was a lie? What if the very stories we've built our lives around are keeping us trapped in invisible chains, denying us our true potential? Today we'll uncover the dissonance between the illusions we've been sold and the higher truths that could set us free. I'm Roach, Mark Roach, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Transcendent is the name of the channel where I share my journey through complex PTSD. When trauma and betrayal show you the harsh realities of life, you may identify with some of the themes I'm bringing up in this video. Dissonance between the illusion painted by old, outdated, obviously clear, false narratives, or just stories that have been instruments to mislead masses of people, whether intentionally or inadvertently. Something has just kept this large portion of the world population powerless. And it's held them in patterns that deny their true potential, in hopeless mechanical routines, soulless patterns. The mechanical behaviors have been named as the root evil by many masters. And these patterns render divine beings, such as you and I, as minions to the dominant benefactors, a privileged elite who may in fact be part of the mechanicalness of the earth as well, but who perhaps have a soulless existence. I mean, who am I to say? But in the illusion of this construct, it's so clear that it exists, such as this way, throughout our history. Such a narrative so often has a thrust to overcome the forces of nature that oppose the ego of mankind in mankind's effort to control and manipulate and defy the flow so very present throughout the galaxy, universe, and the earth. This narrative hinges upon the effort to overcome these forces of nature. In the beginning of at least in the language of the constructed illusion that we're working in here, this keeps the masses acting from primal levels, acting in old polarities, and much acting in the illusions in their minds, far away from the higher levels where it's possible to align with the higher centers which would elevate humanity, bringing peace and defy the ego and arrogance at the core of the pain and suffering on earth. The idea of dissonance between the outdated and misleading narratives and forces that keep people subjugated to elite interest is a recurring theme in various critical theories and social injustice movements. Several thinkers and groups align with this perspective, which critiques the manipulation of societal narratives to maintain control over the masses. Here's some individuals and movements that ascribe to or resonate with these ideas. Number one, critical theorists and social justice advocates, like Bernard E. Harcourt, a critical theorist who explores how dominant societal narratives such as the illusion of order or the myth of free markets are constructed to maintain control and redistribute wealth in ways that benefit the elite. In his book, Critique and Praxis, Harcourt argues that these illusions serve to obscure the underlying structures of power and exploitation, reinforcing the status quo while keeping people from recognizing their true potential for change. He advocates for unmasking these illusions and engaging in praxis or action to achieve justice, even while acknowledging that new illusions may arise in the process. Two, there's Marxist and anarchist movements. Marxist critiques of capitalism often describe how capitalist societies create false narratives to justify exploitation and wage slavery. According to this view, the ruling class controls not only the means of production, but also the cultural narratives that keep workers in a state of subservience. The illusion of freedom in capitalistic democracies is seen as a tool to prevent workers from realizing their collective power. Anarchists and Marxists alike argue that the wage labor under capitalism is akin to slavery, where workers are alienated from their labor and kept in submission by a system designed to benefit the propertied classes. These movements call for revolution as a means of breaking free from these oppressive structures. Third, there's a narrative activism in social movements. Michelle Moody Adams discussed how socially significant narratives shape collective identities and reinforcement systems of injustice. She highlights how certain grand narratives, like the lost cause narrative of the Confederacy, are used to justify oppressive systems such as racism and white supremacy. These narratives serve to mislead large portions of society, keeping them aligned with structures that benefit privileged groups at the expense of marginalized community. Moody Adams emphasizes narrative activism as a way to challenge these false stories and align people with more just understandings of history and society. 4, skeptics, rebels, and outcasts. In broader cultural critiques, there is often an emphasis on how elites perpetuate false narratives to maintain their power while marginalizing those who question or resist these stories. In one example, an article from How to Save the World describes how elites are inculcated with values that justify their privilege, while remaining indifferent to the suffering caused by systems that they uphold. Those who resist such skeptics, rebels, or outcasts are often not part of these elite circles, but instead seek deeper meaning beyond material success or social approval. These individuals recognize the moral dissonance between societal narratives and the reality of systemic injustice. 5, there's critiques of capitalistic democracy. The critique of capitalistic democracy as an illusion of choice also fits into this framework. This view posits that capitalistic democracy offer only superficial freedom while maintaining deeper structures of economic exploitation that benefit a small elite class. The illusion here is that democratic processes can lead to meaningful change when, in reality, they are constrained by capitalist interest. This critique aligns with the broader idea that social narratives are constructed to keep people acting from primal levels, focused on survival and basic needs, rather than higher levels of consciousness where they might challenge these systems. 6, and finally, false narratives in public discourse. Peter Salovey's reflections on false narratives highlight how such stories can dominate public discourse, inflaming emotions and preventing reasoned investigation into societal problems. He suggests that people are naturally drawn to narratives that confirm their pre-existing beliefs. I think that's called confirmation bias, which can keep them trapped in divisive or misleading worldviews. This aligns with the idea that false narratives are used by elites or dominant groups to maintain control over public perception and prevent collective action towards more equitable social arrangements. In summary, various critical theorists, social justice advocates, Marxists, anarchists, and narrative activists recognize how outdated and false narratives are used by elites to maintain control over society. These thinkers argue for unmasking these illusions and aligning with deeper truths about human nature and justice in order to overcome systems of exploitation and oppression. So if you've considered perspectives such as any of these, you're not alone. And in the wake of such, it's important to stay positive and stay grounded. Gurdjieff claimed that the earth was a pain factory and that the ideas of justice and fairness are illusions. And they create this dynamic for the individual around pain and suffering. And many of the stories that are referenced here in these 6 different ideological groupings all use narrative and stories to kind of promote this concept of pain and suffering and overcoming that and keeping people locked in their this primal state of it's got to be this or it's got to be that. And then there's a kind of a lack of focus on your true potential. So I hope this may let the air out of maybe the tire or relieve you from the burden of feeling that you're never going to reach your full potential because of these views or because of this dynamic that is taking place on the earth, and where there are the elites and there are the masses. And I'm not here to judge or to say, good or bad about any of this. What I'm here for is my fellow man, to realize and acknowledge the fact that you may come across some of these perspectives as you work through your trauma, and you may feel like there was some injustice or unfairness. And the more you dwell on that and hold on to that, the longer it's going to take for you to achieve some freedom in your life. So take that and consider that along with some of the other work that I'm presenting from Gurdjieff, Alan Watts, and others. So in summary, various critical theorists such as social justice advocates, Marxists, anarchists, and narrative activists recognize how outdated and false narratives are used by elites to maintain control over society. These thinkers argue for unmasking these illusions and aligning with deeper truths about human nature and justice in order to overcome systems of exploitation and oppression. That may resonate with many of you like it did for me. Life doesn't seem fair or just. And in fact, when you come across some of the work that Gurdjieff and Herman Hesse and Alan Watts, for example, they'll tell you that no, life is not fair, and it's not because of the systems that have been set up. It happens to be an aspect of what I believe is of nature. And, if you go back and listen to the Bible, the sun shines on people that are doing this way and doing something else. And I think the illusions that we build up keep us sometimes trapped, and sometimes the stories keep us trapped in the pain factory or in this idea of suffering by, for example, one of the times I went overseas and I saw some third world or developing, country people, some beggars on the side of the road. And it occurred to me that unless they knew what life was like on the other side, and maybe in America, maybe their pain wasn't quite as dramatic. I don't know. Who am I to say? But I have to think that there were people, that are in America that see the elite, that see wide divide between people, and that has to increase the level of discouragement about life. But in either event, it's not fun to go without and not have your basic human needs met. And then on the other hand, it's as you work your way, maybe through trauma, maybe you've been betrayed, maybe you've had some injustice that you've encountered that have given, and you've somehow gotten a glimpse into some of the failures of institutions of your fellow man, and into the primal behavior that is often occurring all around us, kind of beneath the radar screen, so to speak, and the ugly things that people are doing to each other on a daily basis. So the views that I've come away with after hopefully recovering from my complex PTSD is to try to stay positive and recognize that these are aspects of life here on earth, and look for insights and look for others around us that can kind of hold my hand and develop a trusting relationship with, to enrich each other's lives. Some people may call that altruism or naive. Nonetheless, I'm not giving up. Keep working with your heart. I'm Mark Roach, wishing you all the best.